Hello, I'm Andrew Taylor, and this is The Last Protector, which is my latest Marwood and Lovett novel, set in Restoration England. It's the fourth in the series, but it is designed to be read as a standalone as well. It's 1668 now, 10 years after Oliver Cromwell's death. His son Richard, who succeeded him as the last Lord Protector, has fled abroad into exile. And the central question of this novel is what might have happened if he'd sneaked back into England. England, of course, was a country still bitterly polarised by the divisions of the Civil War. Cat Lovett, my protagonist, has been approached by Richard Cromwell's eldest daughter, Elizabeth, unexpectedly, whom he hasn't seen for years. They were childhood playmates. And Cat is not altogether happy about this. Next morning, Elizabeth Cromwell intruded into Cat's thoughts. Elizabeth, with her plump cheeks and her slit-like eyes, her abrupt, uncontrolled movements, and her over-eager manner. As a child, she'd been like an overgrown puppy, Cat thought, unschooled in manners and desperate to be loved. She was still like that as a young woman. She'd been sly as a child, and perhaps that too was unchanged. Was she also lonely? She greeted Cat as if they'd been the closest of friends, but Cat, who was several years older, had not played with her at Whitehall more than half a dozen times, spread out over 2 or 3 years. Elizabeth had been lonely then. Her mother had exercised little direct control over her. Her father had been much occupied and often absent, especially when he had succeeded his father as the Lord Protector. And for much of the time, Elizabeth had been left in the care of servants. Cat remembered playing shuttlecock in the big garden by the cockpit, and Elizabeth falling over a low hedge and wailing for her maid, and on another occasion, her losing a match and throwing her racket on the ground and stamping on it. The cockpit lodging, where Elizabeth had lived, was separated from the main palace of Whitehall by the road to Westminster. On one occasion the pair of them had bowled a hoop above the gateway that bridged the road, and rolled it down the Privy Gallery towards the door leading to the former royal apartments. Outraged servants had driven them back into their private quarters. Elizabeth had blamed Cat for that episode, though she herself had been the instigator, and Cat had been the one who had received the whipping. Cat had never seen the inside of the royal apartments where Oliver had lived in state until his death, a king in all but name. His son Richard, Elizabeth's father, had moved into the apartments in his turn when he became Lord Protector, but his reign had lasted less than 9 months. Elizabeth had once whispered to her that her grandfather liked to have pictures of naked ladies in his bedroom, pictures that had once belonged to the king whose head they had chopped off in front of the banqueting house. For a while, the new Protector's eldest daughter had been effectively a princess of England, a desirable match for any man. But what was she these days? After the Restoration, Oliver's bones had been dug up from his grave. His head had been impaled on a spike above Westminster Hall, where it was thickly smeared with bird shit and twitched at the mercy of every breath of wind, a decaying reminder of the blasphemy of murdering a king anointed by God. Yet the name of Cromwell was still powerful, a reminder of past glories, and a rallying point for those with present grievances. Well, thank you for listening to me, and I'll say goodbye. And you take care in these troubled times.